The intensive tests to make up the Jedi trials are some of the most integral requirements to graduate into Jedi knighthood, and throughout the history of the Order, there have only been a few Jedi Knights to forego the trials of knighthood and graduate directly into being a fully formed Jedi warrior. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example, was able to skip his trials for being the first Jedi in 1,000 years to kill a known Sith Lord. But what happens to the Jedi initiates who fail these trials? What becomes of the Padawans who are unable to prove themselves worthy of joining the ranks of the Jedi Order? And what fate do the Jedi Order and the galaxy overall have for those that fail? Well, stick with us today, weary acolytes of the galaxy, and let's explore that very question. What happened to Jedi that failed their trials? Perhaps the most common option for a Padawan who failed the trials was to go into one of the various Jedi service corps that each had their own respective responsibilities and duties within the larger order, giving them a role among the Jedi without being a fully formed Jedi. It was highly unusual for a failed Jedi initiate to do anything than join one of the 4 established Jedi Corps. Once a Jedi initiate failed their trials, they would be placed before the Council of Reassignment, which would then assess the current state of the Padawan's ability and figure out which of the 4 service corps would be the most fitting to the given student, though the student did have some say in the final outcome. The 4 corps were divided into the Agricultural Corps, the Medical Corps, the Educational Corps, and the Exploration Corps, each of which played their own significant role in maintaining the stability and security of the larger order. Membership into the Agricultural Corps was voluntary, but was commonly composed of individuals who had failed their Jedi trials, though they were not the only members of the order dedicating their time and services towards the Corps, and many non-Force sensitives also worked here. Not to mention, many veteran members of the order would serve time in the Corps, which had helped them to resupply food and resources to the various systems who had fallen on hard times. Not to mention that this is where the Jedi themselves got their food. After times of war or strife, the Agricultural Corps would provide aid to systems in recovery who were in the midst of reconstruction. Though nobody was ever forced to join the Agricultural Corps, this branch of the Jedi service was oftentimes regarded as the largest of the 4 branches, with the most extensive manpower. It was also considered one of the most important roles of the Jedi Order, despite it not being occupied primarily by Jedi at all. Although some fully formed knights did participate in the Agricultural Corps, they would also lend their abilities to exploration and research in the realm of using the living force in order to develop nourishment, seeking out different types of seeds and foods that could be cultivated for their own use to further their aid. Upon the destruction of the Jedi Order, the members of the Agricultural Corps were indoctrinated with new Dark Jedi philosophies, and many of the members joined the Empire's ranks as Dark Jedi, Force wielders that had not been fully indoctrinated into that of the Light, and were open and susceptible to new dark teachings. These agents of the Empire became some of the most formidable galactic forces that the Imperial regime had to offer, as most, if not all of the members of the Corps were Force sensitive and subject to re-indoctrination by Palpatine and his ideals. Not to mention that some of them likely felt scorned by the Jedi, and as if they were unworthy. After the fall of the Empire, Jedi Grandmaster Luke Skywalker found the philosophies of the Agricorps to be closely associated with the dogma of the previous order, and opted not to reinstate it, as he believed them to be too closely related to the flawed philosophies that doomed the previous organization, as many Dark Jedi stemmed and originated from this group. Therefore, Grandmaster Luke elected not to reform this when the time ultimately came to make the decision. The Medical Corps served as a collection of the most talented healers in the galaxy that served the Jedi Order, and it was said that the talents of the Jedi Medicorps were able to rival even that of the greatest galactic institutions. These servants of the Medicorps were often deployed as combat medics who were set up triage outposts near the battlefields of warring systems, and they assisted in healing both Jedi and non-Jedi alike, providing their services to anyone in need, sometimes on both sides of the conflict. One of the most interesting aspects of the Medical Corps is that after they were disbanded by the Empire, they were one of the institutions not to be reinstated by Luke after his reconstruction of the new Jedi Order, but the reasoning behind this was slightly different from his views on the Agricultural Corps. Instead of disbanding the Medical Corps, Master Luke Skywalker elected to integrate the teachings of the Medicorps directly into the Jedi curriculum and train his students in their talents without developing a specialized field. This allowed each of Luke's students to have a fundamental knowledge of healing, both to apply to their comrades at the academy, as well as to use their talents to aid someone else who might need their help in their adventures. The educational corps were comprised of scholars and teachers who sought to accumulate knowledge beyond the Force itself, and they believed that one could not always rely on the Force for whatever they may need, needing knowledge itself. They sought to collect as much education as possible with the goal of passing their teachings onto the next generation, preaching patience and leniency in regards to their pupils. Much like the Metacorps, when the Jedi Order was re-established by Luke, he elected to integrate these teachings directly into his practices and ensure that these ideals were shared by his students at large, not just relegated to different groups. Luke preached the importance of education and curiosity to his students, inspiring them to find their own answers and come to their own conclusions about the galaxy as a whole and its many, many mysteries, seeking knowledge in whatever aspect that they may find themselves questioning or even interested in. This meant that the services of the educational corps were largely redundant and oftentimes unnecessary within the confines of Luke's new Jedi Academy, though in the era of the previous Jedi they were highly important. This was the group responsible for a lot of the information held within the Jedi archives themselves, responsible for the locations of various planets, systems, various organizations, as well as their allegiances. There's something you slowly begin to learn as you look into the 4 different corps of the Jedi that actually failed their trials and the operations and responsibilities that each of these different facets hold within the larger order. It also makes the Jedi Order feel much, much larger when you realize that there are these huge organizations and establishments beyond the confines of the Jedi Temple and the actual literal Jedi Knights. The final branch of the 4 service corps were the Exploration Corps, which were made up of Jedi Seekers and Navigators who sought to chart the unknown systems in search of ancient civilizations and new worlds. These were the individuals who charted many of the most effective hyperspace lanes and pioneered the science of navigation as well as interstellar travel. They interpreted ancient texts and artifacts in order to recreate the history of fallen civilization, as well as train some of the most gifted galactic historians that the Republic had to offer. Due to the dangerous nature of their work, many fully fledged Jedi Knights would often accompany the searchers on their explorations, with guardians and consulars often joining these expeditions to serve as protection and representation of the Jedi Order at large if they were to make contact with new civilizations, though the roles of the historians and researchers were often relegated to members of the Corps. These members were some of the most integral assistants to the mainline Jedi during the events of Order 66, as they were highly invaluable and they had the resources and knowledge to get many of the most prolific Jedi Masters off-world and into hiding. Though most of the largest ships were wiped out by the Empire, the smaller vessels that were operated by the Corps were some of the most effective at evading Imperial rule. They helped Jedi Masters and Padawans alike escape from the planets on which they were stranded after their betrayal by the clones, and their knowledge helped many of the most talented Jedi Masters survive the Purge and the oncoming regime of the Empire. Though only a small fraction of the Jedi Order survived, this percentage would have been much, much lower if not for the efforts and abilities of the Exploration Corps. It was said that somewhere within the unknown regions, one of the largest exploration scout ships was still operational, still out there learning and collecting information, providing sanctuary to perhaps the largest collection of Republic refugees that was able to remain hidden from the Empire, though this ultimately remained a legend. Following the collapse of the Empire, these teachings were again integrated into Luke Skywalker's mainstream order, and the need for a specialized corps of explorers was no longer necessary in Master Skywalker's new Jedi vision. But there you have it, guys. It turns out that when you failed the Jedi trials, you were still actually very integral to the inner workings of the Jedi Order and their operations, almost in some ways as important as a fully formed Jedi, feeding the innocence of the galaxy, learning as much about the galaxy around you as possible in order to aid the Jedi, learning of the unknown space, new worlds, and civilizations, and caring for them when they are injured or in need. 4 very distinct and important subsects of the Jedi Order that are rarely talked about and that we wanted to highlight here. But Acolytes, that leads us to our major question for the video. Which of the 4 subsects of the Jedi Corps did you believe was the most integral? And if you had to choose, which would you ultimately choose to follow? What are your thoughts on what ultimately became of Jedi that failed their trials? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching. May the Force be with you, and I hope you have a great day.